A group of entitled squatters move into my house while I'm away on vacation, claiming that they had a rental agreement with the owner, which is me. But despite the fact that I never agreed to these people living in my property, I decided to get some petty revenge by not only taking back my property while they were away, but also humiliating them in the process. And I'm honestly so satisfied by the way this turned out, and I really hope I never deal with them ever again. Here's what happened. So I live in a rural area, about 100 kilometers out of a large regional country city area. My town has about 200 people in it, and there is no shops, meaning that the nearest shop is about 20 kilometers away. I also live with my partner, and we don't have any kids yet. Now, 4 couples who are our best friends decided that we should all go on a 4-wheel drive camping holiday together to the top of Australia on Cape York Peninsula. We organize our annual holidays to coincide together, and we would be away for just under 4 weeks. My neighbor also joined us, but his wife does not like camping or 4-wheeling, so she decided to stay at home. About 2 weeks into our trip, we are camping rough just alongside rivers, creeks, or near the beach as we very slowly meander our way up to the tip of Australia. We're doing lots of fishing and swimming in the waterfalls and all kinds of fun things. We also rarely pass through towns and therefore have no phone reception most of the time. As we near the top, there is a town about an hour from the tip, and we call in there to fuel up and get some more supplies. But it's right when we get there that our phones start going off like crazy, with numerous missed calls, text messages, and all kinds of alerts. My neighbor's wife left many messages stating that someone had moved into my house, a man and a woman, and a small child. She did ask them what they were doing, and they stated they were friends of the owner but couldn't and would not state the owner's name. And fun fact, I'm the owner of the property. I contacted the police, who was a friend of mine, and he said that he would investigate. The following day, I returned to the fuel station, which had the phone reception, which by the way is about an hour away from our campsite, and the sergeant told me that he went to my house, and there was indeed 2 adults and a child now living in my house. In fact, they were unloading a trailer with furniture when he arrived. The male told the sergeant that he had a rental agreement with me, but upon being asked for the rental contract, he became defensive and stated that any issue between them and me was a civil matter and that the police has no power to investigate. He also stated if pushed, he would claim squatters' rights. And after that, the police left. And it was right about here that I knew my greatest nightmare was coming true, as someone had taken over my house while I was gone, literally when I had absolutely no way of stopping them. The sergeant then told me that he couldn't remove them as it was a civil matter, even though I said they must have broken into the house to gain entry. He apologized and said that his hands were tied, so to speak. He then warned me to be careful, as if we forced them out, they could sue us for a variety of things. So be mindful on how we handle this. He said he was aware this sort of thing had been happening, where squatters prop somewhere until a court orders them out, thus getting 6 to 12 months free accommodation, or alternatively being forced out and suing for damages to get money. I returned to the campsite and I told all my friends. We then spent the next 6 hours talking about how to deal with it. We ran through ideas from dragging them out and throwing them into the road, all the way to taking them to court. Now, going to court could take months, probably 6 to 12 months, so that was not an option. We did, however, finally decide on a course of action. The following day, I contacted my police friend and I asked him what he thought about our plan, and he agreed it was a good decision. In fact, he often wondered why others don't do the same thing, but he reiterated that he could never advise anyone to actually take this course of action, and he was very specific that we must adhere to this plan as I described it on the phone. Don't get impatient and don't deviate to make it quicker. I need to stick to the plan. My neighbor's wife said they weren't damaging or stealing anything yet, so we decided not to return immediately. We continued on our holiday as best as we could, but we did decide to return 4 days early to enact our plan. So that meant we only had 2 more days left at the top before making our way back down south. We didn't want to ruin our much-awaited holiday with all of our lovely friends, as it possibly would be the last time all 4 couples and us could go away together like this. So my partner and I decided to make our way back home as we had planned, and we did so slowly with all the same stops and overnight stays. If we really wanted to, we could have driven back home quickly within 2 days. However, both of us felt that with this in the back of our minds, it did ruin the last half of our holiday, as we were constantly thinking about it and couldn't really enjoy our time away as much as we could have. So finally, we arrived back home, but instead of going to my house, we all go straight to my neighbor's house and we pull up there. Now, this slightly spooked the squatters, as usually you don't see too many vehicles in our road, and not 5 vehicles altogether. We knew they had come outside of my house and were watching us, but we paid them no attention, and after an hour, they seemed to have fallen into a false sense of security and went back inside. We all set up our tents on our neighbor's property, which was about 100 meters away from mine. His property was slightly elevated, so we picked a good good spot where we could watch them constantly without being too obvious. The next day, the squatters did nothing and stayed at the house, and the following day it was more of the same. Now this was concerning, as our plan could only happen if they left in their car. The third morning, we saw the male leave on his own, and about 30 minutes later he came back. We think he might have been testing the water, so to speak, just to see if we went over to the property, but of course we didn't because we realized the female and the kid were still inside. Then at about 11 o'clock in the morning, they all got into the car and drove off. One of our friends discreetly followed behind them, and he was calling us every 15 minutes to update us as to where they were going. After they drove past the shop 20 minutes away, we presumed they were driving to the major town to shop, which is about a 3 to 4 hour return drive. We then went over to my place and removed all their property, taking it out onto the road adjacent to the fence and dumping it right there. I then got a massive big industrial chain that I have in the shed, and I secured it between the posts of my driveway, and the rest of my property is fenced in from the road. We then packed up all the tents in my neighbor's place, and everyone moved into my house. Our other friend had advised us they just hired a trailer, and we wondered if they had decided to move out, and perhaps we acted too quickly, but inevitably we decided we acted correctly. An hour later, he advised us that they were at some other house and loading furniture from that house into the trailer. He thinks they may have been relatives or friends they were previously living there with, as they seemed friendly with each other as they were hugging and talking, all as they bid their farewells. So they were coming back to my house with more furniture. We then took this opportunity to relocate all their possessions further down the road away from my driveway and possible conflict when they return. I borrowed my neighbor's tractor, scooped up all their stuff into the bucket of the tractor, and dumped it 100 meters further down the road. Then I parked just in front of the chain across the driveway with the bucket facing the road, really blocking access to my property now. My neighbor said if they tried to enter with their vehicle, then his tractor was there to let them know that we would pick up their car and flip it back onto the road. Well, they arrived an hour later, they stopped at the pile of possessions out on the road, and the male stormed up to the driveway where all 11 of us were waiting for him. This idiot tried to claim that he had an agreement with the owner until I told him I was the owner. Then he said they had squatters' rights, and we then had a really big verbal argument to which he ended up stating that we acted unlawfully and he was getting the police to ensure that he could get back onto my property. Well, sure enough, the police did arrive, and it was my sergeant friend who didn't pay much attention to this guy's rantings, because instead the sergeant just flipped the whole scenario back onto the squatters. He said to them, well, maybe while you were away, these people have squatted where you claim to live, and as such, it is a civil matter. Take it up with the court, but you cannot go into this property as it is in possession of this person right now. So pack up all your stuff on the side of the road and leave. He tried to have me charged with throwing all of his stuff out of the house onto the road, but the police asked him if he had proof that I did, namely some videos or pictures or something. His wife then falsely claimed that he had seen me do it and actually wanted to make a statement to such. Well, this is when my friend stepped up and advised the sergeant that he had followed them all day and had them all on his dash cam. The sergeant then asked the woman what time she witnessed this, and she said it was just after lunchtime, to which my friend queued up the video to that time and advised her that he had just seen a video of her in a shopping center car park 100 kilometers away at that time, and now he wouldn't believe anything she said. On the other hand, he did say to her, you can make a statement, but I will charge you with lying under oath. Well, after that, they left. A week later, I spoke to the sergeant, who told me he followed them around town for 30 minutes while they seemed to be scoping out other places to move into. But with the police following them everywhere, they drove back to the bigger regional town. However, to hurry them along out of town, the sergeant pulled them over and gave them a traffic ticket for overloading their trailer, as it now had twice as much crap in it. So the best thing we did when we had squatters was to wait until they all leave for shopping or whatever, and then step in and retake possession of my property. It was a lot quicker and cheaper than court, and from now on, whenever we go away on holidays, we are getting friends in the house to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. I literally can't imagine how terrifying that must have been. Like seriously, you guys leave for like what, a few weeks? And these people move in and try to act like they have some kind of agreement with you. It's like, dude, that is not happening. You are not taking my house. So I seriously love the way you handled this. You just waited these idiots out because, you know, eventually they have to leave. They can't stay there forever, especially because it sounds like nobody lives in the town you live in. Like if they really want to go shopping and get good stuff, it sounds like they have to drive a long distance just to make sure they can get their stuff, leaving you plenty of time to get your stuff back. So good for you for getting everything back, because honestly, those people were massive jerks. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for pointing out to my my roommate that it's not my fault she can't travel internationally since she chose to go to Canada for university. Because right now she's pissed off that she can't go to the United States with her boyfriend on a trip. And after I shut her down, she has now decided to stop talking to me. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my roommate and I have lived together for 6 months along with a third roommate, and we become good friends. We attend a Canadian university. I was born here while she currently is on student visa from India. Now, her boyfriend recently was offered a very cool opportunity to attend an academic conference in the States over the March break. It is a big deal that he was asked to attend, and the school will pay for his travel and accommodations. When he told her about this opportunity, he offered to split her plane ticket and she could stay in the hotel with him. So basically, he offered her 4 days in the States for the price of half a ticket, a hotel, and meals being covered. Well, here's the issue. She cannot legally enter the United States. And sure, technically she could, but she would need a visitor's visa, which is something that she would not be able to obtain in time for the trip. Because she is on a student visa, she is not allowed to cross the border, so now she's very upset that for one, she's missing out on a great opportunity, and secondly, her plans with her boyfriend are being changed. However, last night things reached a bit of a boiling point. It's been 2 weeks of her dragging her feet and complaining about her boyfriend's trip, and while at first we were both supportive, both me and my other roommate are starting to get a bit annoyed at the situation. Specifically, she makes a lot of remarks about it not being fair that I'm allowed to travel wherever I like, with comments I assume weren't being serious until she explained to me that she genuinely thinks it isn't fair. Once she started complaining about my last-minute United States trip that is coming up, namely the road trip to the States that my boyfriend and I decided to take on a whim, I then started getting very annoyed. In the heat of the moment, I snapped. I then pointed out to her that she chose to come to Canada on a student visa, knowing the conditions of her being here. Well, she didn't take too well to that and hasn't really spoken to me all day. I do feel bad that I snapped at her, but on the other hand, if she had chosen a different country or stayed in her home, she would be free to travel as she pleases. I don't know a whole lot about the immigration system or how unfair it might be, but she made the decision to come here, and in doing so, her right to enter the United States. Now, for context, she has told me quite a bit about her choice to study in Canada. She says that she got bored after her bachelor's degree and applied to the first Canadian university she found online, and she's not even leaving like an unsafe household or an area. So seriously, am I the jerk for saying what I did to my roommate? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. Okay, your roommate sounds super obnoxious. I can understand them complaining to a point, but seriously, the fact that they try to drag you into this, in my opinion, is not fair. And just like anybody else, I would be very sympathetic to her situation if she was at least reasonable about this. Because sure, she's missing out on a cool trip with her boyfriend, and I understand why she would be upset about that. I really think anyone would understand where she's coming from, but I think in this scenario, it's probably not about what she said, but probably the way that she said it. Because I'm imagining this went from like mild annoyance to absolutely unbearable within minutes. Even more to the point of her being like, wow, you get to go to the United States, but I can't. What's the deal with that? Like, I can see why that would be the breaking point and why you would be like, wait a second, this is so stupid. How am I at fault for you not going to the United States? Like, she does know that she chose to come to Canada, right? Like, seriously, this is not your fault, and the fact that she's trying to make it your fault or somehow spin you into all of this is just so weird. So no, I don't blame you for saying what you did, because it really seems like she was trying to make you feel bad about her situation, and that, in my opinion, is absolutely not fair. My obnoxious neighbor is constantly slamming the doors to a community lounge, as she feels the need to slam them as hard as possible just to make sure they close. So I decided to get some petty revenge by sabotaging the doors in such a way that they would only close if she gently closed them, resulting in this lady slamming them for minutes on end, never quite catching on exactly why it's not working. And I honestly find this entire situation hilarious, and I'm so glad that I pranked her. Here's what happened. So I live in a place where the lounge has 2 doors, both with dodgy latches. My landlord's mom, who seems to have nothing better to do with her days than lounge on the sofa all day watching tacky soap operas, has this absolutely infuriating ritual. Every time she re-enters the room, she insists the doors need to be fully shut. So she slams each door repeatedly until they latch shut. Now, what's the problem, you might be asking? Slamming one door almost always makes the other one pop open because of the air pressure. Now, instead of figuring this out, she'll go back and forth slamming one door and then the other, sometimes multiple times, until they both magically stay shut. This can go on for upwards of 10 to 15 minutes, and this is at all hours of the day and night. To make things even worse, the main door she uses to exit the room and participate in her slamming Olympics is the furthest one away from her beloved sofa. So every failed attempt means that she's trekking back and forth like it's a marathon. One day, after enduring this nonsense for far too long, I decided to have a little little bit of fun. I partially fill the door latches with hot glue, just enough so that they don't latch properly unless you really gently but firmly press the door into the frame until it clicks. And trust me, the word gentle is not in this woman's vocabulary. Now, every time she slams one door, it's even easier for the other one to pop open at the slightest air pressure change. And here's where the real fun begins. Once she finally finished her door slamming ritual and flopped back onto the sofa, I wait about a minute, I crack open the door to create a minor change in the air pressure, and I listen to the chaos unfold as the door springs open again. Well, cue her exacerbated grunt, stomping back up, and starting the whole exhausting process all over again. Now, what's the cherry on top of this story? She hasn't figured out how to use playback apps for her soap operas. So, every time she's up slamming doors, she's missing bits of her shows. At this point, her day is less about lounging and more about managing her never-ending door drama. And I'm absolutely living it. And sure, the slamming is annoying, but watching her waste her time turning into a door-wrangling gladiator, in my opinion, is absolutely worth it. Okay, I love this for so many reasons. For starters, this is super petty and I love it. I mean, you don't take the traditional route of complaining about her or anything like that. You don't even bother talking to the landlord because you know it's his mom and they're not going to do anything about it. So I love how you sabotage this door and essentially ruined her experience of watching TV. So yeah, I find this funny and I think this is a great way to get back at somebody, because if she's going to disturb everybody in the general area with her slamming these stupid doors, then she better get used to doing that for minutes on end, because from the sounds of it, I don't think she'll ever figure out exactly why they're not closing. My parents care way too much about the location of my first job after college, as they've desperately tried to convince me that I need to stay in-state, despite my career demanding that I move out of state if I want to survive. And at this point, I'm honestly so confused and I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, one piece of annoying and honestly stupid advice that my parents have given me throughout my college career is that the location of my interns and my first job after college should be a priority. For context, I'm from the suburbs of Massachusetts, and I will be working in big tech in New York City after I graduate from college this spring. This is at arguably the most prestigious company in the field. Now, as a side note, I will use terms like mid-tier company and top company, not to sound pretentious, but just to give context on the situation. Throughout college, my parents would insist that I find jobs in Massachusetts. The only reason they're fine with most places on the East Coast is because it's not that far from home. However, if it was something like California, they see that as a significant negative. Honestly, although I've never really had too much of a problem with location of my internships and my jobs, this advice affected my mentality throughout college. During my freshman and sophomore year, instead of applying anywhere and everywhere, I would not apply to internships far away because I was subconsciously thinking of what would please my parents. Even junior year, I applied to internships out of state, but if asked what I prefer, I would always mention East Coast, and even had the mindset that a job in Massachusetts would be ideal. I even told a recruiter in an interview once that location was a top priority, simply because I prefer to be close to my family, even though this was really only because of my parents. For my junior year internship, all my internship offers were out of state, so it didn't matter. My internship was at a top company. However, I think since I wasn't used to advocating for myself against my parents, if I got an internship at a less recognized company in Massachusetts, my parents might have convinced me to take the latter internship because of location, even though the former was so much better for my career. Now, I know this because during my sophomore year, I worked at a good defense contractor, which was very good for a sophomore internship. However, the internship is definitely not as good as a big tech internship for junior summer. When I got an offer at a big tech company, my dad suggested that I try to see if I can get a better offer at the defense contractor. Although you can negotiate, it's clear that the defense contractor can't compete with a big tech company, especially in terms of salary, and my dad knows that. And my internship salary was not the thing that mattered. Although the contractor provides a good salary for new graduates, the big tech company provides a much better salary, even accounting for cost of living. The only reason my parents were even suggesting to still consider the contractor is purely because of location, which is terrible advice. Also, it wasn't even just about the salary. The specific big tech companies I got offers from are way better for career growth than the defense contractor. The only thing that was supposedly better about the contractor was location, which I don't even think is crucial in most cases for new graduates. It's really only now that I realize the location of the first job shouldn't be the main priority, especially if it's in a big tech hub like New York or California. If the only option at my company was to work in California, I would have still advocated against my parents to take it over a worse offer in a close location, even if the latter offer was still decent. My parents honestly expect me to sacrifice what's optimal for my early career for their comfort and me being close to home, which is honestly so stupid. When I have have a conversation about this subject with my parents, their argument will be, well, what if there was a job that pays the same in Massachusetts? And they're talking about a hypothetical job in Massachusetts for new graduates that pays similarly as the top company I'll be working at. I mean, that just doesn't even exist in the first place. And sure, there's obviously times where it makes sense to make these sacrifices. Like if you have a kid or a family, but I'm literally a college graduate. I don't understand how my parents think that it should be a priority. Obviously, I think it is reasonable to make it a consideration if you have multiple competing offers in your hand, but making it my main priority as a college senior who's searching for jobs is just completely ridiculous. And the fact that my parents keep insisting is honestly so annoying. I'm glad I ended up muting this advice while job hunting later in college because it honestly could have damaged my early career. And this may sound like a rant, but I'm honestly wondering if anyone's had a similar experience and how you handled it or would have handled it in the future. Because at this point, I don't know what to do. Yes, I have to 100% agree with the original poster here, especially with the field that it sounds like they're going into. Because here's the facts. Your parents only want you to stick around because they want you to stay close to them. They want their kid to be close by so that they can still have a connection with you locally. And it's like, sure, if you had a different career plan, then maybe that might work. But it really sounds like you need to be in a big city to make this work. So for them to literally be like, oh, don't find a job out of state, stay in Massachusetts. Like that is really selfish and so annoying. And I think if I was in your shoes, I would feel the same way about like wanting to find a job that makes sense. So yeah, I think you're doing it right, and I think you've got this figured out really well. Because if you had followed your parents' advice, I really do agree with you in saying that this would have stifled your career in a major way. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.